Welcome you all back to ThinkTech Hawaii's Humane Architecture, this being the 348th episode already. And we're back to continue to talk about a place on Earth where they know how to do social housing. And we do this with our triumvirate here with who is at that place. And this is Pedro Capriata, back in Barcelona, but you're originally from Peru. Hi, Pedro. So the other one is Martin Anzellini, who is broadcasting very fancily back from his hometown in Bogota in Colombia from the office of the head of the city planning department. And you were just coming out of a very important meeting right along our topic that we're in so dire, desperate need here in Honolulu because we can't get that done. And this is social housing. Welcome back, Martin.
Hello. Nice to talk from here.
And last but least, we have me, Martin Despang, who is showing a little bit of what we have been doing these last 4 weeks. And about a week ago, I have been what you see in the back here. And this is the lanai of the School of Architecture in Munich, the TUM, the Technical University of Munich. And Public Spaces, Jay, who is with us behind the camera, this is a big cafeteria that's flooded with students who have discussions about important things as politics. And this is where it's happening. Our School of Architecture doesn't even have a coffee shop anymore. It has a baking, boiling hot courtyard that's not to be, convenient to be in. So there's a lot to learn from us. And I'm bringing an invitation from Tom Thomas, who you can see at the bottom there with me, who is a professor at the university there. And we had him over here to enlighten us about a year ago. And so he's extending an invitation for the students, our Hawaii students, to come in a very non-bureaucratic way to join his institute and do research together. And the research working title is Shift, as you can see it there behind me. And it's basically based on the awareness that we Western cultures, and this is basically you, Jay, and me, Martin, and you, Thomas, who for the longest time, too long of the time, have thought we are superior. We are the developed cultures and countries, and we're going to bless you, the underdeveloped, as Peruvians and Colombians, with our wisdom. Where did that go? Nowhere. Or to a very bad side of climate change and social inequity and all these other things. So Thomas invites us to shift things, turn things around, and basically say, let's do it the opposite way. What you see at the very bottom there next to me is what our exotic escapism expert Susanna just sent us. That is a project for towers in Munich, which are usually a no-go. You see from the Department of Architecture, the only sticking out things are actually are churches. And no non-clerical architecture is supposed to dominate that. And of course, as Jay, you call it, capital concentration tries to fight that. So the architectural firm of Herzog Dümmeron has proposed these two towers. And people have been going up against it and put in a petition, but that petition legally seems not to hold up. So there's a chance for Herzog Dümmeron. If you follow the link at the very bottom, you will see this is not going to help what we have in mind, which is social housing, because that's going to be gentrified housing. So, and by the way, Jay, happy 2025, but I phrased it before the show and saying thank you for the resistance, the la resistance, and the basically the resilience in resistance, we said, in reluctance to fear. So thanks for that. And you always enlighten and concern us with your daily email blast. And you bring up the hope, and we see this sky there. This is called, when the students go with us, they will experience the föhn, which is the hairdryer climate. Every once in a while it gets warm, and it feels like a hairdryer in the cold in the winter time. And that sort of very glowing sky, I put the blue sky. Blue sky is a format that, in all this desperation of the Zuckerbergs and the Amazon guy, the Bezos, buying up all the press and helping Donald with it, we're looking for hopeful media, and this is another one that you were finding there. So that being said, you brought something from home along the lines of us learning from you, Martin. So the next two slides are all yours. There we go.
Yeah, here we are talking about shadow. No, the first one on top is this tree is called Chiminango. It's called Pichinde. Sorry, it's just a shadow tree. And in many cases, as this little village in the Pacific coast of Colombia, where I am developing my doctorate thesis, is probably the only successful shadow in the public spaces. No construction, no budget. It's just the people cultivating those beautiful Pichinde trees to provide a shadow, an easy breezy space for them to live. No, and then. At the bottom, we have these houses that also are very clever in addressing, first of all, let's say, marginality. No, these persons are living at the boundaries of formal settlements, and they are touching the water, and they reach that water through palaphytic architecture that is a very resilient system. Because these houses, actually, there are even festivals on which they lift up the houses, no, and they are reacting to climate change in a very clever way. So we, as you were saying before, Martin, we have to keep learning from vernacular and being humble in the sense of taking this wisdom, this profound knowledge, and applying it to contemporary, let's say, formal, top-down processes of developing the habitat. We have here, of course, in the bottom of these constructions, we have spaces for the summer. No, in the dry season, the bottom of these houses become available spaces. No, so the river goes down, and then you have a space beneath. No, you can hang your hammock there. You can park your boats there. Spend some time, and then in the rainy season the water goes up, and then you go with the water. You also go up to the top part of the houses. So again, clever, simple systems to address habitat. Yeah.
And to what can that lead?
Yeah. This is the Embera community. Again, this is people from the Pacific. No, this methodology on which on how they built those roofs is exactly the same, that with a different palm, with a different product from how the pandanus tree roofs were built in Hawaii. And actually, there are we were talking about this, some papers that are proving that the Embera language from these women that we see on the image are sharing words with the tropical Pacific communities. So this exchange happened. So again, we have to reestablish this tropical Pacific connection. Probably Lima, I must say that Lima, Pedro, is the biggest capital of the Pacific, no? And we don't, in Hawaii, we don't talk about Lima as a city that is part of the Pacific, no? I can talk about Colombia, where I was some days ago, a fantastic place, full of vegetation, the most rainy place in the world, very vulnerable in terms of climate change. And just to close, we have to talk about how our behavior in Hawaii, in Texas, in New York, how we address climate change, how much energy are we consuming in Honolulu that is generating climate change, and who are we affecting? So we have, again, to really talk about this responsibility, because we are responsible of climate change when we live in Honolulu and we spend 100 more times energy, and we pollute 100 more times than the persons that are in this picture, right?
Yeah, and that's the point that Thomas is making exactly, that, and some other Germans get excited about that too. We want to point out that who charged us with that big dilemma of writing about architecture here in Honolulu, and me and Bill Chapman and DeSoto Brown and Don Hibbert are scratching our heads, trying to make the best out of it. And the more we go back in time, the easier it is for us. And the more we go to contemporary, the tougher it gets. So the publisher, Philip Moiser, reached out to you, Martin, rightly so, to actually revise a publication by yours that's already pretty good. Top left is your website there, guys, go check it out. And he encouraged you and he invited you to revise that and republish that. So that will be out soon. Congratulations, and I look very much forward to that, and I hope everyone else who watches this as well. So why is this all so, why are we so jealous? Before the show, Jay was saying about how you guys talk and how you guys are so much smoother than we Western guys, and I said it's the Latin lover effect. So that has to do with climate, because you can be loving and lovable all the time because you don't have to go into hibernation. This is me back home, our exotic escapism expert, Susanna. We're up for dinner, and at one restaurant, they had these bubbles up where they have a heater thing suspended, and people mingle around, and conditioned by that polycarbonate kind of enclosure there, we have to do that. At the bottom left is our office home, and one of our recent research object, which is a small bubble, a mobile bubble. This is a camper from the heydays of Germany in the 60s and 70s and 1970, Eriba Pan, that we're thinking about. Maybe hibernation, maybe the way for us Germans in the cold, the main way, the only way is to basically shrink our footprint, shrink our livable footprint. And the next one is we go into campers, and you see where they're from. By the VW buses, the Venegons, the bullies, however you call them, they are from my hometown in Hanover, have always been, will always be, will always be. Nothing is certain anymore. VW is in big trouble and needs to close down plants, and every location is worried, and we as well in Germany, if we basically will lose that. So what does this have to do with us? Because the guy who sold this to me is a Barcelonian. Sergi is his name. He lives in Bavaria, has a Bavarian wife, but he doesn't want to lose touch with your adopted home, Pedro, for 20 years, Barcelona. But the only way to make it to come back from time to time, he cannot afford to buy a place because it's outpriced, as we're here in Honolulu. So he tried to trick the system and basically bought a boat that he will live on. And for that, he needed the money. So I bought his bully, as he calls it, because he gives it a female gender. And that reminds us of a show, Jay, from some weeks ago about Don Pierce, the one who practiced that here on the island. So the point is here, the pitch is, we need to, what people in the business world that I have no clue about, but I heard about it, call it diversifying, right? We need to come up with a multitude of clever alternatives, and finally, give up on capital concentration a little bit, because if we're all sitting in fancy high-rise condos and the world is falling apart around us in our front yards and homeless on the street, that's not going to please us. So why not giving up on the restrictions of that we don't want any RVs on the island? Why not giving up on not to allow people live on water? These little things that basically ease the problem. And if we do a multitude of these, this could have a big impact. Just hot off my email here, I was praising my altruist landlords, my current one as the previous one, and Martin is already smiling because I shared with him hot off my phone yesterday that I got a note from the property manager that once again, like exactly a year ago, my unit is up for sale. And it's, very likely what's going to happen. It's going to be Airbnb, like most of the units in my building. And again, I'm thanking also this altruist landlord that he has been holding up so far, and giving it to me like below market rate. And I'm not, the ones who own, they're vulnerable as well, because even as a capital investment, you got to be super rich. The richer you are, the more you profit from the system. And that's what we're having big times in politics these days. And we need alternatives for that. And that's why we do this show. So this is basically now finally getting to last year's coverage or footage that I basically took when I was visiting your Barcelona, Pedro, and when we actually met. And this is again with a van in front. It's these signs on traffic light posts that basically announce that you guys actually have, I mean, talking 2000, the year 2000. So when in 2000, we had the expo in Hanover. That was the last time when we were basically up on the world stage and showcasing that architecture and innovation is something that we care about. Ever since, I'm sorry to say, well, I left, but I stay in touch and I don't see anything up on that level, but you have that. So which are these two events, Pedro, that you guys, the left one is the one that you had, through which we met, and the one on the right is the one that you will have, well, it's actually the opposite. The one on the right, sorry, is the one that through which we met. That was between, in summer last year, and the one on the left will happen in 2026, and that's a big one, right? That's in architecture as big as the expo, the World Expo for everything else. So what are these about, Pedro?
The first one, the one you mentioned where we met, is actually a recurring event, and the team of Guiding Architects we're currently preparing proposals for the one. We have to turn them in by Monday. Proposals for this year's weeks of architecture that lasts for 7 weeks. It's not that short. I mean, it's 7 weeks during which there are many activities concerning architecture, visits to buildings, debates. So it's a little bit of everything. And I think this is really amazing that we have something like this, and it's a yearly event. It's not every 2 years or every 4, or I don't know what. It's every year. So that's pretty amazing. Regardless of the results, maybe some of the activities are not as interesting as others, but still, it's something that really encourages the debate. And our team is going to be talking, for example, about some examples of the housing situation. That is, of course, a very big issue nowadays. We'll talk a little bit of different things, about historical architecture too, etc. But this is one of the topics. This particular one is related to what we're going to be talking about now, and the other one is an event for 2026. And it's for which Barcelona will be the world capital of architecture. So we're also working on, we already actually presented the proposals for that one. And we got a green light. So we're going to be participating. Guiding Architects will be participating directly in those events. And I don't know if you were aware of this, but it coincides with the UIA Congress. I'm saying the letters in the Spanish version. I'm not sure how they're spelled, what order they're in English. It's the International Architecture Union. Probably it's like that. And they have a congress every couple of years, I think. I'm not sure how often. And in 2026, it's going to be in Barcelona. So we're going to have the two events coinciding. And well, it's going to be a big deal. So we're sure that we're going to be talking a lot about Barcelona next year, more than this one probably, and we'll see what comes out of that.
We're very, very excited about it, and I admit, and that's the point, we're jealous of it, because let's make one example here. This is, Martin, what we had hoped you would intern with as part of your DARC project. You have to do a practicum or praxis or whatever. And this would have been the perfect fit, but unfortunately we heard they have a hiring freeze, a lame excuse, I would say. This is Kamehameha School. This is one of the largest landowners, and it traces back to the royalty, to Hawaiians. This is their headquarters, which is a pretty cool building from the tropical brutalism era. At the beginning of each show, I'm always saying, you know, how many views we had, and now I have to differentiate because the YouTube views, we're up in the 21,000 somewhere soon, they differ from Jay, your website views, which are actually more. So I have to go and recount, and we're going to end up more. But it's not only about quantity, but it is about quality. And this is what Kamehameha School should be about. This is where they are headquartered, and they have this development land right in their front yard that we kept talking about. That is, they called it our kaka'ako. And this is what they do with it. And this is how it shows why we're in so deep shit here, because this is what they just announced to be one of their new buildings, right? And we were just talking about the aged Ricardo Bofill, who we thought was a little getting off track. And it makes us, based on your suggestion, Pedro, at the very end, in many, many weeks or likely months, you suggested to go back to his very beginning and the Walden project. So that's going to be to uplift and go back to the roots. But again, what hopefully, I think from experiencing the W tower at the bottom left there, show quoted, was sort of a mistake or an exception to the rule because there haven't been many following. But what you see on the right side here, the show quotes, is all what the developers and the architects involved in this project here have been doing before. So they're repeating the mistakes. They don't seem to learn from it. And I call this here Lakeshore Drive Apartments because it's right on prime ocean front on Ala Moana Boulevard. And that reminds us, of course, of Lakeshore Drive Apartments. That is Mies van der Rohe. His inaugural project when he became an immigrant, being kicked out by the Nazis and found a new home in Chicago and ran IIT. And Mies van der Rohe, we remember, you were saying we can always hit you up terminology-wise on Bauhaus, Pedro, as by the way, you have a PhD in architectural history. Here we go. He was the last director of the Bauhaus. And at the bottom right is from the German press, the Westdeutsche Rundfunk, the West German radio. And this is an article about, there's another petition where the AfD, which is not an alternative, is that right-wing party that's unfortunately gaining track in Germany, has basically said, we got to revisit the Bauhaus because the Bauhaus was bad. And the Bauhaus was trying to suppress traditions. And again, my father and business partner Günther, thank you, brought this to my attention here because this is happening in his front yard, in his home state of Saxony. Lower Saxony is where we come out from. So this was us driving by the Bauhaus a few years ago with our little Audi that never made it to America, which is a shame because it's the most fuel efficient Audi, the Audi A2. It has 80 to 140 miles per gallon. It's an old car. Ours is 20 years old. But I think it's a good fit to show that kind of level of innovation that we Germans at least used to be known for, which you guys got excited about. And the Bauhaus also is for, which Forbes magazine calls the most important, powerful woman in the world. This is Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission president, who we were excited that she got joined in that role of the most important woman in the world by Kamala Harris. But sorry to us stupid Americans, here's my American citizenship that speaks that I thought I needed to get to have Trump not kick me out when he was elected first time. So us Americans, unfortunately, missed out on that chance for now. So Ursula needs to hang in there. She just got reelected for her second term. And so hang in there, Ursula, because also all the best for you, because at the bottom we will see that she's currently recovering from pneumonia. And she was, again, sending signs of life and recovery. And she said, home, sweet home, which is Hanover, which is my hometown as well. And so, again, Ursula, keep up the baton and the torch, because you see the Bauhaus as an inspiration, still and ongoing, versus these confused people of the AfD. as we can read here, to foster sustainable solutions for transforming the built environment and lifestyles under the green transition. So that's one of the mission statements of the new European Bauhaus as part of her European Commission. So that being said, just very quickly, Jay, where you had in the transition, we talked before the show, you foresaw all this. You were just agreeing on that with Tim Apicella yesterday. And so by having to weed out many of the great shows, we try to make up for that as much as we can. So the one with George Kaysen, the movie show we greatly miss, but we will have George back in working with us on alternative housing solutions as of this semester. Actually, we meet the first time this afternoon. So George is back. And the Bauhaus had a big impact, even in Hawaii, as we see here. There's Alfred Price, Austrian immigrant here at the top right, his first house in Hawaii. Jay, I don't need to report on the tragic fire in LA having eaten up Richard Neutra's house, at least one of them. He was an Austrian immigrant as well, and you did that, so I don't need to do that. But I want to point out this, Alfred Price, then at the end of his life, was totally basically shifting, as Thomas would call it, to tropical exotic. This is the last house he ever built up here in the Diamond Head Hills, before he changed to become a policy maker. So this is a show crow from many years ago. So this is truly a reinvention, Martin. I think it's fair to say that he learned the lessons from Hawaii, from the Pacific, from you guys in Peru and Colombia, and stripped away his stiff Austrian, Bauhausian touch and really transformed it. So that being said, we can't miss out you, the art historian, architectural and art historian, Pedro. So this will be your stage, and probably we have to somehow leave, have to stop. We give it a couple more minutes, but then you reconnect to that at the very beginning. But this is obviously something we can't miss out on, the German-Barcelonian connection. And this is about nearing about 100 years ago, talking big events, right? That you guys, there's a tradition of that. And this is probably the most prominent embodiment of German Catalan connection. So what are we seeing here and what are we talking about, Pedro?
Well, this is the super famous German pavilion. I always knew it as the German pavilion. It's been come to known here in Barcelona as the Mies van der Rohe Pavilion. And it was built for the 1929 International Exhibition. And it's, it was a crucial landmark. It's curious that it wasn't that influential on Spanish modern architecture because the connection was much stronger in part to Josep Lluís Sert, this architect that eventually migrated to the U.S., also fleeing the fascist regime here. Well, he already had exiled himself in Paris during the war, and since the fascists won, he ended up in the U.S. But in any case, Sert was a big admirer of Le Corbusier, and he had actually worked with him for a year. So it's very easy if you look at the architects of that time, the modern architects of the actually more than 1920s, 1930s, were doing here. They did some very interesting projects, but mostly influenced by Le Corbusier. In spite of this was still a very important reference, but not only for people here. I remember when I was in architecture school, some of these things teachers say that sound like very grandiloquent, and they say the 4 most important buildings in the 20th century are these, and one of them was the German Pavilion, of course, from Barcelona. So these kind of things, they might be an exaggeration. I'm not sure if it's one of the top 4. But it was definitely a super influential building for many reasons, because it was like so ahead of its time. In the lower picture, you can see one of the other buildings built at the same time, and it looks like something from the 19th century, from the mid 19th century, maybe. And the worst part is that it was designed by somebody who had been a pretty good architect, and that had completely lost his way by then. But it's interesting to make this comparison. No, it's a building that is really amazing, that been um, has um, uh, has aged magnificently. No, it's you visit this and it's really something that it takes your breath away, and you say, this is 100 years old. Really,
Yeah.
could have been built, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago,
And yeah, absolutely. And
or
I want
just
to
a
add
week.
that sort of, our climatic connotation that we're making as culture based on climate and how to deal with it in a natural way. While again, Alfred Price came here and hadn't freed himself yet, hadn't basically Hawaiianized himself yet. He just dropped a Bauhausian box. Mies did actually free himself. He basically built an open, and Barcelona is obviously not like Hawaii, but that makes it even more special because you have temperatures going, down in the wintertime, and it gets cold and damp, not freezing, but cold enough that this is basically a manifesto. And we have to say, we will, say this has been rebuilt. So it had been torn down after the event, and as an initiative of local architects, it had been rebuilt basically over the years. This is really exciting for you tropical guys because it's kept alive, not just as a museum, but periodically artists are invited to basically mess with it. So this is a fellow tropical guy from you guys, and share with us your thoughts about that very recent installation, so to speak, talking climate and culture.
Yeah, well, that was
Martin?
definitely, it's one of the things I love about the Mies van der Rohe Foundation, is that you probably know that they have one of the most important prizes in Europe for European architecture. So they don't just stick to taking care of the pavilion and things like this, and they encourage and they regularly invite. Sometimes they invite super famous people. I remember there was an installation by Sana, the Japanese group of architects, some years ago, that was super interesting too. That was like a while ago, at least 10 years. But sometimes they invite other artists that are not as well known, and they can be architects, they can be landscape artists, sculptors, etc. No? And as you said, I think this keeps the building alive, and this is like it's such a like an updated version of what would be the pavilion, maybe if we designed it today, because we're more and more concerned with the importance of nature, the connection between nature and architecture, the greenery and all this. And it's unlikely that we would build maybe something as minimalistic as what, well, depending on the architects, of course, some of them might still do things like that. But I think it's very appropriate for the times to do this, and it's also a way of showing how we could change architecture, because of course nobody's going to think of leaving the German pavilion like this because it's a historical landmark, etc. No, but we could do something similar with a lot of other buildings that are maybe not as interesting. No, and it's turning something very simple into something completely different and more apt to the current trends and the current necessities.
Martin, fellow tropic here, thoughts on this
No,
installation,
I
which
would
is
just
by a
add,
Brazil artist, by the way. He's from Brazil. So
no,
Mr.
that talks
Reisowitz here.
about the flexibility of architecture, no? How the pavilion is just a frame for the life to happen, and this could happen in housing, in public space. Just we should be as architects, of course, present and concerned about detail, but also leave space for the users to appropriate the space. And this is one of the nicest things about, in general, modernism, good modernism, and particularly about the
Well, and again, it for me, it goes back to, again, the fellow tropiqueers and my blasphemic creator theory that whoever made Hawaii, he, she, it, you can decide yourself. must have had serious attention deficit disorder and only got it right at one place in the world, according to human thermal comfort of our blood temperature in 98.5 in Fahrenheit or Celsius, somewhere in the near the 40s. And since we're heat engines, our ambient temperature needs to be lower. And where in the world do we have that day and night, year round? Here in Hawaii. That place then was named Hawaii. And everything else was, according to that, left in pieces and shattered. And some engineers needed to fix that and engineer trees that shut off their water supply in the wintertime. And so the leaves fall off and stuff like that. So actually, the whole world was supposed to basically be like in Hawaii. And everywhere in the world, we can say we're thriving for making up for that. So here, Mr. Caio Reisewitz basically did that to this pavilion. And again, getting us back to Barcelona and why it's worth to, again, the climate is significantly more similar compared to where Mies came from. Mies came from freaking cold Germany, where I'm from. So you have to do a lot more effort to make up for that. And in Barcelona, it's a little less. And then in Colombia, depending in which part of Colombia you are, right? If you're on the beach, you're closer to it, but you also have higher altitudes, and Bogota has colder, so you got the whole variety. And Peru. And so that being said, I believe, as exciting as it is, always is, we have to let you, Jay, go to have business lunch. And so we will pick up from here. Again, next time, wrap up some contemporary views of the Barcelona Pavilion, as we sent me there to document it. And then we will go back to the bigger issue, which is that you guys, Pedro, are doing great social housing for the people. And we will show what we, what we discovered last year. And I'm very happy to hear that you're capitalizing on that and currently in the final write-ups for, sharing that with the world that you invite, like you invited me last year, and share the good news with everyone else. So we have a lot to learn here in Hawaii. First of all, we have to do good social housing to begin with. And then we have to, be courageous enough to share that with the world and talk about the good things. And that's a long way to go, but we're going to start here and now with your thesis, Martin, and with tree architecture tonight. George be back, Jay. And so needless to say that we will probably ask George to then do the final report again, as he did with Primitiva 3, so we can look forward to that. So we're not giving up. We try to be as resiliently relentless in coming up with better propositions. So that being said, thank you guys for being together today, sharing that from your home away from home, which Barcelona is in one way or the other. It has been for you, Pedro, for 20 years. Martin, you have been there for a year, some 3 years later than when you came, Pedro. I was there some 3-4 years ago and last year. And Jay has been there when you, Pedro, have been there as a little child, when talking autocratic systems that we will overcome, also the ones that we're just getting in, we will overcome them. And that happened to Spain, and you've been there with your mother as a little boy, and we will have that in the concluding show some many months ahead of us, when you were in Barcelona with your mother around the time when the Walden project was built. So there's lots more exciting stuff to come.
Made that connection.
So. All right, till then, stay all tropical, exotic, tropical. See you in 2 weeks. Next week is going to be DeSoto with his great new show, How Did We Get Here? Speaking here, Hawaii. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.